Look hard enough at a famous city plan, and you'll start to see things. A star, a compass, a square, secret geometry, supposedly proof of hidden hands. I'm an architect, and I love this stuff, but I have one rule. You have to separate what was documented, what was intended, and what was merely projected onto the map by someone holding a pen and wanting to find it. Some of this geometry is real and deliberate. Some is the opposite of secret, and one of the most famous occult shapes of all is just a plot of land. Let's run the test. The star, the compass, the square. Real geometry, intended meaning, and pure imagination, sorted out, plan by plan. Before we touch a single city, here's the architect's instrument, and it's not a compass, it's a question. For every shape someone points to, I ask three things. 1. Is it documented? Did the designer draw it on purpose? And is the drawing still here? 2. Is it intended? Did they tell us what it meant? In writing, in a report, in a competition entry? 3. Or is it projected, a pattern a later I found, and loaded with a meaning the designer never put there? Documented, intended, projected. Most secret geometry collapses the instant you sort it into the right column. Let's run 6 cities through it. Start with geometry that is completely, undeniably real, the easiest column to fill. In 1593, the Venetian Republic built a city shaped like a 9-pointed star, Palmanova, in northeastern Italy, out near the frontier with the Habsburgs and the Ottomans. Not just a fortress, a mathematical diagram made real. 3 concentric defensive rings, a hexagonal piazza at the dead center, and radial streets running straight to each of the 9 bastions. And here's what makes it pure documented geometry. Every angle was calculated. Each point of the star was a bastion, placed so defenders could rake the walls of the next one. Interlocking fields of fire, no blind spots. The star isn't decoration. The star is the weapon. But Palmanova was also a statement, built in the age of the ideal city, when Renaissance thinkers believed a perfect society could be engineered into a perfect shape, a war machine and a utopia at once. And now the wait what? When this flawless, perfectly defended city was finished, nobody wanted to live in it. Remote, rigid, like living inside a machine. The Venetians were so desperate to fill their masterpiece that in 1622 they offered free building plots and pardons to criminals, to anyone willing to move in. A perfect diagram became a half-empty monument to its own geometry. Documented? Absolutely. You can still see the whole star from space. Now a case that gets dragged into every occult city's video and dissolves the moment you read the paper trail. After a great fire burned Detroit to the ground in 1805, a judge named Augustus Woodward was handed a blank slate, and he drew something extraordinary. Not a grid, a web, broad avenues, 200 feet wide, radiating from circular plazas like spokes from a hub, the blocks between them tessellating into a repeating hexagonal honeycomb meant to grow outward across the whole territory. From the air, the surviving fragment looks unmistakably like a spider's web, and that single word is why Detroit shows up in the conspiracy reels, a web laid over a city to trap it. So run the test. Documented? Completely. Woodward's drawing survives, and so does his reasoning. He was a close friend of Pierre L'Enfant, the man who drew Washington, and he openly modeled Detroit on the same Baroque language. Radial avenues, circular nodes, grand sight lines, the Versailles Washington playbook of the age. The hexagons aren't a sigil. They fall out automatically when you pack equal-angle radial avenues together, the same way delis will, later in this video. It's the geometry. Doing it, not a coven. And here's the way what that kills the spell. Detroit barely got built this way. The plan was so unwieldy that in 1817, while Woodward was away in Washington, the governor simply threw it out and replaced it with a rectangular farm grid. Only the downtown wedge, Grand Circus Park, and a few avenues, was ever finished. A secret web designed to control a city that the city itself rejected within 12 years. Documented geometry, real and rational, wearing an occult costume nobody who drew it ever stitched. Now the city everyone whispers about, and where the test earns its keep. In 1791, the same French-born engineer we just met, Pierre-Charles L'Enfant, laid out Washington, D.C., a regular grid slashed across by grand diagonal avenues radiating from focal points, throwing circles and triangles all over the map. And yes, if you draw lines between certain monuments, you can make a compass, a square, a star, if you're patient. The internet has found all of them. So let's run the test honestly. Was L'Enfant a Freemason? Yes, he was. That part is true, and I won't dodge it. But the scholarship is clear. Historians refute the claim that he buried secret Masonic symbols in the plan. What it genuinely reflects is Masonic tools, the square, the compass, the level, used exactly as they were used across that era, not a hidden code, but a public language. In the 18th century, geometry was the symbol of reason itself. The compass and square stood for measurement, for order, for a world governed by rational law instead of by kings. So when L'Enfant ruled those long diagonal sight lines between the city's great institutions, he wasn't casting a spell. He was making an argument you could see from the ground, that the new republic would be governed by reason. Geometry was democracy made visible. That's the difference between documented and projected in one city. The tools are really there, openly. The secret code is something later I laid on top. And the man himself? L'Enfant was paid a fraction of what he asked, was dismissed within a year, and died in near poverty, while his civic sermon became the blueprint for the most symbol-hunted capital on earth. Now a different column entirely, intended, because sometimes the mystical geometry is completely real, and the designers didn't hide it. They told us. In 1912, two American architects, Walter Burley Griffin and Marion Mahoney Griffin, won the international competition to design Australia's new capital, and their plan for Canberra wasn't merely urban. It was cosmic on purpose. They drew a north-south land axis, sighted onto Mount Ainslie at one end and a mountain 25 kilometers away at the other, crossed by an east-west water axis along the river. A great cross, laid across a whole landscape, locked onto the mountains themselves. And here's why this lands in the intended column and not the projected one. The Griffins were deeply influenced by theosophy and geomancy. They genuinely believed a capital should harmonize human government with natural and spiritual forces. Their parliamentary triangle is a true equilateral triangle, a deliberate, dominant shape no other modern capital is built around. And the whole plan grows from a single geometric seed, the vesica piscis, the almond shape where two equal circles overlap, each passing through the other's center. That is the exact figure medieval Masons called the source of all sacred geometry, the shape they used to proportion cathedrals. In Canberra, it isn't an ornament you find afterward. It's the generative code the city was drawn from. So run the test. Documented? Yes, the drawings survive. Intended? Emphatically yes. The Griffins wrote down what it meant. Real sacred geometry in a real 20th century capital, and no conspiracy, no hidden hand, no secret society. Just two architects who told the truth about their compass. The honest version is more astonishing than the myth, not less. Here's a city that lives in two columns at once, and teaches you to keep them apart. After King George V's coronation in 1911, the British moved the capital of India from Calcutta to Delhi, and handed the design to two architects, Edwin Lutyens and Herbert Baker. What they drew is one of the most geometric capitals on the planet. A single monumental axis, the King's Way, runs from the Viceroy's house on Raisina Hill down to a great memorial arch. And around that spine, the residential city is woven from a relentless lattice of triangles and hexagons, sightline locked to sightline. This is documented, intended geometry, imperial order, made visible. Lutyens said outright that the only language fit for the empire was the classical one: axis, symmetry, proportion. The hexagonal web wasn't mystical. It was administrative. Now watch the projection arrive. Because the plan is dense with six-pointed stars, you'll find claims online that Lutyens encoded occult symbols, a Masonic capital in disguise. And here is exactly where the architect's test cuts through it. The six-pointed star was a standard architectural motif in India centuries before Lutyens picked up a pencil. The Mughals used it everywhere. You'll see it carved across Humayun's tomb, with nothing to do with Judaism or the occult. It's geometry. A hexagon makes six-pointed stars the way a square makes right angles. Automatically, no message attached. The exact same lattice you just saw produced Detroit's spider web. So sort it honestly. The grand geometry is documented and intended, an empire drawing its own authority. The occult meaning is projected, laid on top, centuries later, by eyes that wanted a secret. Same plan, two different columns. Telling them apart is the entire skill. One more before the famous one, my favorite, because here the projection happened in living memory, and we can watch it overwrite the truth in real time. In 1957, Brazil held a competition to design a capital from nothing on the empty Central Plateau, and the architect Lúcio Costa won with a plan he sketched almost as a single gesture. Two axes crossing. A long, straight, 8.5-kilometer monumental axis, lined with the ministries and the seat of government, crossed by a second, gently curved axis carrying the housing. And in his own report, Costa wrote exactly what it was. He said the plan began with a cross, the primary gesture of those who mark a place or take possession of it, documented in his own hand. But Brasilia is shaped a little like something else. The straight axis reads as a fuselage. The two curved housing wings sweep back like wings. And so, almost from the day it opened in 1960, the whole world started calling it the Airplane City, a capital in the shape of a jet, a nation flying into the future. It's on the postcards, in the guidebooks. It is, by now, the official story everyone repeats. And the man who drew it said it was a cross. That's the projection caught in the act. Not an ancient mystery, not a secret society, just a vivid outline that looked like a meaning, and a public that found the airplane more exciting than the cross. So when someone says, look what this city is really shaped like, remember Brasilia. The secret meaning isn't always hidden by the designer. It's added by everyone after. And finally, the shape everyone gets wrong, including the conspiracy theories that are sure they've got it right. When the U.S. military broke ground in 1941, they needed office space for tens of thousands of people almost overnight. The architect George Bergstrom gave them a five-sided asterisk building, a pentagon. And here's the gloriously unmystical reason why. The original plot of land was an awkward five-sided tract, bounded by five existing roads. So they shaped the building to fit the lot. The site was later moved to where the Pentagon stands today, but by then the five-sided design was locked in, so the shape just stayed. A geometry of deadlines and dirt, not secret doctrine. Now watch what people do with it. They call it the world's biggest pentagram. But stop. A pentagon is a five-sided polygon, with five straight walls and an open middle. A pentagram is a five-pointed star, drawn with crossing lines. Not the same shape. Not even close. The pentagon has no star in it at all. No crossing lines. No points. Nothing. A building with five flat walls, born from a five-sided field. And yet, because fivefold geometry is ancient and genuinely potent, a symbol of health to the Pythagoreans, of the five wounds of Christ to medieval Christians, the building keeps attracting an occult meaning it was simply never given. The purest entry in the projected column we have, a shape so practical it's almost boring, wearing centuries of borrowed mysticism that belong to a different shape entirely. And that's the whole lesson in one building. Geometry accumulates meaning whether we plan it or not. The pen that drew the Pentagon was thinking about parking and deadlines, and history handed it a pentagram it never asked for. So lay them all out and run the test one last time. Palmanova's star documented pure military mathematics. Detroit's spiderweb documented Baroque planning, abandoned in 12 years, never the spell the reals claim. L'Enfant's compass and square in Washington documented tools used in public. The secret code is projected on top. Canberra's cross and vesica piscis intended. The Griffins wrote down what it meant. New Delhi's hexagons intended order, with a projected occult reading laid over ordinary geometry. Brasilia's cross, documented by the man who drew it, then overwritten by a world that preferred an airplane. And the Pentagon's pentagram, projected onto a shape that's only a pentagon. There are stranger ones still. Naypyidaw, Myanmar's new capital, whose move was reportedly timed to the minute by an astrologer. But notice the rule holding across all of them. Every shape that's genuinely amazing sits in the first two columns, the documented and the intended. The conspiracies all live in the third, the one with no paper trail. So here's the architect's takeaway, the test I'll leave you with. A real symbol leaves a paper trail, a designer who wrote down what they meant, a drawing that still survives to prove it. A projected one leaves only a pattern and a person holding a pen who wanted to find it. Cities are absolutely full of the first kind. Real geometry, real intention, real meaning, hiding in plain sight on every map you'll ever open. You never need the second kind to be amazed by them. If you like having the built world read honestly like this, the channel's full of it. Stick around, and I'll keep drawing you the difference between what's there and what we wish was.